So in our study, we found a 34% reduction in the rate of death, cancer types, including breast and prostate cancer. Those are the two most common. But we also looked at several other cancers, including colorectal cancer, hepatocellular cancer, and renal cell carcinoma. I think it's a bit too early to speculate about mechanism. The study that we did was at an epidemiologic level, so we weren't really interrogating the how it happened. There is separate preclinical evidence that suggests that GLP-1s could have a number of anti-cancer effects through their impact on inflammation, also on glycemic control. Cancer cells need energy to survive, just like all the cells in our body, and so that could be one potential mechanism. There's also some biological data suggesting that GLP-1s may have an effect on proliferation rate of cancer cells. Here at ASCO, I've actually had some really interesting conversations with clinicians about our findings. Some of them have been bringing to light another potential interaction or another potential mechanism, was that perhaps these medications, in addition to a potential direct effect, there could be an indirect effect in that GLP-1s tend to reduce the burden of adipose tissue in the human body. And so that could be allowing cancer therapies to be more effective. So that's another potential mechanism. So I think over the last few decades, there's been a continued evolution as a clinical community and as a research community that we need to stop looking at diseases or systems one at a time. Medical school training forces people to pick a specialty with good reason, but I think the interaction of metabolism with cancer is one perfect illustration of how these things can't be looked at in a siloed fashion. I think our study is certainly suggestive that bringing together kind of cardiovascular, metabolic disease experts with oncology and the care and management of patients is potentially even more important than we thought it was. At the same time, for GLP-1s, it's incredibly challenging because these prescriptions are coming from all different kinds of places. They're coming from a primary care setting. They could be coming for endocrinology for certain indications like diabetes. One of the reasons these medications are so prevalent these days, I think, is there are non-traditional routes of access that are expanding incredibly. If you watch the Super Bowl, you see ads for direct-to-consumer access of these medications, telehealth. In preparation for this conference, I tried to get data on what proportion of use is happening in these non-traditional pathways versus through typical physician prescribing, in person, and I wasn't able to find any data on that, which is interesting. So I think the only way we're going to understand quickly the potential anti-cancer effects of this medication is if this class of medications is if we work together quickly. In particular, I'm intrigued by some of the telehealth and direct-to-consumer providers because they're collecting data on GLP-1 use because it's tied to payment. They're actually collecting data on the timing, the dosage, and also symptoms. So that could be another really rich research repository to kind of understand this question better. Yeah, so I think as these medications become so prevalent, I saw an estimate recently that 1 in 8 Americans are taking these medications or have taken these medications. This becomes something that all providers are going to need to think about, in particular, the interaction of side effects. Our research, we didn't have the right data to answer some of the questions you posed to support guidance for clinicians. I think we're also just very early in our understanding here. The study that I did with my colleagues is honestly one of the first large-scale ones I've seen. We've seen other studies looking one cancer at a time with smaller sample sizes. I think it's very clear to me the clinical community is very hungry for this information about what to do. I think I've also heard from patient advocates on the cancer side, should we be encouraging GLP-1 use for cancer control in addition to its, initial indications? All of those questions, I understand where they're coming from, but like we're not there yet in terms of the research or the evidence. I think we need to see some prospective studies. We also need to see some randomized trials of GLP-1 use in cancer populations to really better understand what the signal is versus what might be some of the bias.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I think to really deeply understand this potential benefit of this medication, and it's really important that we understand this soon, given the potential significance in oncology in particular. There's a couple things that need to happen. We need to use different databases that have better information on GLP-1 use. So for example, the study that we're speaking about today was based on oncology electronic health system data. Most of the GLP-1 use is emanating outside of the oncology setting. So people are getting it in primary care, endocrinology, direct-to-consumer pathways. We need to bring data sets that capture great information on GLP-1 use, start date, stop date, dose changes, things like that. And we need to integrate that with the very best oncology data, which start and stop dates of anti-cancer treatments, for example. Our study looked at overall survival, which was a good place to start, but I think we also need to look at earlier endpoints. I would love to see work on progression-free survival, for example. So in addition to kind of reducing mortality, do these agents potentially slow down progression of disease?